show you is an example of a report. This is a report for usability. They are testing a piece of software and providing a usability report. How usable is the software? The structure of the report is actually pretty good, but that's not what we are concentrating on now. Structure we'll do in a later part of this lecture. But just let's look at some of the writing, and what I want you to pay attention to is the problem of details. For example, in the executive summary, which is basically where you state what the test is supposed to show and what results you obtained, they have this sentence. Overall satisfaction on the SUME global scale was, whatever, 51. Okay, that's fine, but nowhere in the report was SUME really explained as to what it is. Okay, not in this is the beginning of the report. Even later, nothing's explained. They will explain the metrics in the SUME report, and they'll go through that a bit. But the overall idea, at this point, people see SUMI, and they don't know what it is. Now, it may be that someone's very familiar with usability testing will understand this, but someone who's reading the report is not necessarily a usability testing expert. Maybe they're just somebody in the company that wants to find out whether, or an investor maybe, who wants to find out if this piece of software is worth it. Okay, so it would be nice to explain that, as I mentioned here. What is SUME? Well, it stands for Software Usability Measurement Inventory. Great. But that should have been spelled out the first time. The first time you use a term, even if you think your audience may be familiar with it, it's always better to spell out the entire thing, to put it in expanded form, and then you could put in parentheses SUMI, and even more than that, it may also be good to explain it even just in a couple sentences. This I took from the SUME site. Okay, so it tells you it's a method of measuring software, the usability of software using users from the user's point of view. Very interesting. It doesn't take much to put just a couple sentences in there so people understand what you're doing. Perfectly okay to do this. Okay? So that's one of the things reports should always make sure to put special terms in expanded form, and certainly a term like this needs to even have maybe a line or two of explanation as well, so people will understand the results better and not be mystified at this point and have to go to the internet to find out what does this mean. Okay. All right, that's number one. And then we have here full product description. Well, it sounds good, but if you look at it, what do they have here? DiaryMate, which was the software that was being tested, is a computer version of a paper diary and address book. Okay, fine. This is exactly what they said up here. DiaryMate is a computer version of a paper diary and address book. So they just simply copied from the executive summary into the full product description part. So that's another thing not to do. Don't just copy from one section to another to fill in the blanks. That's called, bad. That's a no-no. All right? You have to add something. Say something substantive, or don't say it at all. If it's already stated before, then don't just repeat the same thing in the same exact words with a cut and paste or a copy-paste. Okay, a full product description, I would assume, if I see that as a title, would be a full description. I want to really know what's in this software. You don't have to do a screen capture at this point. That should probably be in an appendix. But at this point, I would at least want to know what all the different options are in the software, what I can do with it, in terms of saving or exporting or whatever. All right, nothing is stated here except what they put in the summary, the top. Then they put a second statement, which also is just copy and paste, exactly the same almost. DiaryMate provides diary, contact, and meetings management. Well, here they said the same thing. Provide diary, contact, and meetings management facilities for the individual and work groups. Same exact sentence, just copy and paste it down here. This is really not a good report, this kind of thing. All right, now they add one more thing that wasn't in the original. Is a commercial product. Well, thanks a lot. I mean, at this point, they almost added in a detail which is kind of ludicrous, because anybody who ordered this report would know it's a commercial product or not. So at this point, they actually added almost extraneous information. I mean, it could be in there, but it's certainly not essential because anybody reading the report will know the report will probably know it's a commercial product, which includes online help and a 50-page user manual. Okay, it's good to know that there's a manual and online help. Okay, that's the full product package, and for technical writers like myself and you, that probably sounds good, and you're happy that it includes that. I'll show you later where they make another big mistake, a critical mistake, where they explain how they tested the product, and they do not explicitly say that they were testing the manual along with it. Very confusing. Only at the end of the report you find that in fact the manual was being tested at the same time. That's nowhere to be found until you get to the end of the last appendix. It's pretty shocking. Okay, so that's another problem. As I said here, give me the full description. I want to have something more than just a repeat of the executive summary. And that's another thing not to do. Don't just repeat yourself in order to get the report done. All right, now let's look at more problems here. Okay, objectives. All right, it tells the aim of the evaluation was to validate usability of the calendar, the address book functions, etc. Okay, that's fine. That's what I want to know. What was the aim of the test? And then they say representative users were asked to complete typical tasks and measures were taken of effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction. That indeed is what they did later on. But at this point, efficiency sounds like something that I would intuitively know what that means. You know, how fast could you do something? Satisfaction, how happy were the people in using the software? I mean, that's kind of almost an intuitive thing. But what's effectiveness? I don't know what it means in this context. I don't know. Was it effective or not? I mean, does it mean, was I able to make use of the thing? Or I don't know. I mean, what does effectiveness mean? And that's my second question here. What's the difference between effectiveness and efficiency, for example? How effective was it? Later, we'll find out effectiveness means, in reality, it just means were you able to complete the task? In other words, were you able to schedule something on the calendar? Were you able to use the diary and write in it? Or were you stuck? Did you get stuck? That's what they mean by effectiveness. Well, those are the formal measurements of this particular testing service, and that's fine. But you have to explain it first. If you're talking about test objectives, I would like to know the nature of the test before you begin to give me the results and the procedure, etc. I would like to at least know what you're testing, and it only takes a few words. You know, they could have listed these things in a bulleted list or in a table instead of just putting them across the line. Just giving me very simple definitions, a few words of each one, and then I would be much happier. What I want to get across here is that when you're reading any document, doesn't matter what, it could be a report, it could be a user manual, it could be a brochure, and it could even be a novel or a short story. You have what we call readers' expectations. Readers expect to see something coming up. You know, if you're in the middle of an adventure story and suddenly, I don't know, a volcano went off and the lava is coming down, and then you just suddenly switch to something totally different, you better have a really good technique worked out to do that, because otherwise the reader will just get frustrated and throw the book away. You have to follow through on what readers expect to happen, have some kind of expectation of what happens next, or at least tell them what went on, what the end result was. Same thing here. If you're testing for effectiveness, well, I expect to know what that is. If I don't know what it is, I get frustrated. Now, what I did was I started scanning the report down in other sections until I looked at the results and et cetera. And there, far down in the report, they define what effectiveness is. It just means completion of the task. They had to define it there because they had statistics on how many people completed the tasks that they had to do. Okay, but why should I have to wait until then in order to know what it is? Okay, because if you're going to state you're going to test for these particular things, then supply the information at this point of what those things are. Supply the definitions. It doesn't take very much. So apparently the person who wrote the report is a bit sloppy. In other words, he's kind of fill in the blanks here and hope for the best. Probably just cranking it out. But that's not what we want to do in a good report. Okay? Let's look for a little bit further. Method, we won't go over right now, but it seems okay, except for the formatting is horrible. But what they say, maybe it just came out this way in the internet. I don't know. Maybe they transferred this report to an HTML document and therefore came out like this, because it is an HTML document at this point. But I mean, a bullet out here, as you can see, totally threw me off when I read this, because this looked like it was a main title, and then these were the sub things, but that's not the way it is. This bullet was just out of place, which is one of the worst things to do in technical writing, as you know. And it's confusing. Here too, this is confusing. These are bullets. There's no space between these bullets and what comes next. So, you might just assume that this sentence here belongs with the previous stuff, but it doesn't. It's something new. Other characteristics that they used to select participants were here, and then they list other things here. So it's not formatted very nicely, which is another thing that formatting does affect the way people read documents, as you know. Certainly, user manuals have specialized formats, and just the way things appear on the page can delay understanding or promote understanding, as will be seen when we get to desktop publishing. Okay, but let's go a little bit further now. Okay, we have what they call the context of products used in the test. This is basically the background, what they were tested for, how the procedure went, what they were going to be asked to do. All this is fairly straightforward. Experimental design, which is something we'll get to in the next part. Finally, they come here. Finally, where they're given, this is one of the funniest things here. Two things here. First of all, it says the evaluator reset the state of the computer before each task. Okay, procedure. Participants were given introductory instructions. The evaluator reset the state of the computer before each task, and provided instructions for the next task. Well, at that point, I asked myself, it seemed to me, intuitively speaking, that the evaluator got up and instructed people on how to perform the task. That's what you would normally associate with provided instructions for the next task. And then I asked myself there, well, what about the user manual? I mean, it's part of what they said was included in the full product description. Didn't they want to test how good the user manual was and how people use it, if it was usable or not, and if it gave proper instructions? So at this point, I was confused. Not only that, but I mean, how many people actually get an instructor in front of them when they're about to perform a task on a computer, and the person tells them exactly what to do? Are they expected to take notes? Are they expected to remember what the person said, remember the procedure, and then do it? The whole thing was very strange. Again, a very serious omission. At the end of the report, it was actually this procedure appeared in the appendix in its full description. The exact words that were said to each participant were recorded, and there we learn that the instructor didn't give them instructions exactly. What it just said is, okay, now you have to perform the following task. You can use the user manual at your disposal right here, and whatever, and that's it. And then they were supposed to do the task. So there we find out that the user manual was being tested. But there's no indication of that anywhere in the report except in the very last appendix. Okay, that's another big omission. I'm just trying to get across here that you have to be detailed and you have to be specific in reports. You have to say exactly what was tested or what was described or what was investigated, down to the last detail. You can't leave things out. There's no way of really explaining what you need to put in here, because every report is different. It could be an accident report, it could be a software report, it could be a usability test report. There are many different types of reports, but they always have to take into account what the reviewer is thinking when you're writing. What questions does a reviewer have in his or her mind, when the reviewer is reading the text? That's the sensitivity that you need to have. And there's no way I can say what you have to include, because every report is going to be on something different. Okay, but you do have to always think of, does this reviewer understand what I'm saying. If you look at the report as just simply recording information independently of who's reading it, well, then you run into these problems where the information is accurate, but it's not detailed. It doesn't have all the details in there to make it clear. Okay, it is accurate, and it is, it conforms to the ideal of at least providing the information that corresponds to what was done. But the problem is it doesn't really give everything. It leaves out questions that the reviewer might have had, and that's the part that needs to be improved. Okay, here's another one. At the end of this whole thing of the procedure, finally they were given $75 for their participation. I thought that was just kind of funny. And the reason why, not because they were given $75, but because they left that at the end of the procedure. Well, it's true, I suppose, if you look at it over time, that's what happened when they finished. Then before the people walked out, they were given $75. But they obviously were promised the $75 beforehand. It's not like at the end of the procedure, at the end of the test, they just got up and then before they walked out of the room, somebody yelled, "Hey, come back here, I have a surprise, here's $75. They were obviously encouraged to participate in the test by giving them promise of payment. Okay, that needed to be stated at the beginning, at least at the beginning of the procedure, how the participants were selected, and the participants were selected from a certain group of people, and they were encouraged. They were given $75 to participate. This should have been recorded way at the beginning. First of all, it might have some influence on the results. I don't know. Maybe people who respond to these things are certain types of people who want to make $75. Okay. It's kind of funny just to pop it out at the very end of the procedure. It's another omission that should have been stated beforehand. Okay, here finally we see something about effectiveness. Okay, and now we finally learn what it is. Okay, as I said here, finally we find out what it is. The percentage of participants who completed each task correctly. That was the thing that I was wondering about before. It's only stated here in number 3, in the third part of the report. Okay. There's an analysis of data. Then the results. Now, the results section also I don't like. In my opinion, and I've said this many times in connection with user manuals and other documentation, you should never have a title without some text underneath it. That's the klal. Okay, now not everybody follows that. You will find many of user manuals and other technical documents that do just have a title without anything underneath it, and then right away another title, a subtitle like this. I think that's a serious omission. I think that results, I would like to have even a short paragraph of a few sentences telling me the results include the following, and telling me what they include, and tell me a little bit about how the results were calculated, something before I start looking at the tables. Because once I start looking at the tables, I just have to figure out the table on my own without any guidance whatsoever, and then maybe I'll have some confusion. So having some type of an introductory text right after a title, even a major title, I think is a courtesy that the reader deserves. Okay? And omitting it is just laziness, as far as I can see. Here it says performance results installation. And then when they do want to say something, like if I don't quite understand all of these things here, they're fairly self-explanatory, but there may be something I don't understand, then they put it afterwards. Okay? I think this is also a problem. I should know before I look at the table what to expect, not look at the table, get frustrated, and then start looking around to find out what these things mean. I'll show you a more serious one in a minute. These are fairly easy to understand, so you would say, well, we don't need much explanation, but we get to a place where it's not so simple. Here, SUME results. Well, again, we don't really know what the SUME is anyway, because we haven't ever been given a definition of it. And in this point, I look at global, and I'm wondering, what's global mean? What does that mean? Well, they will, as I said, it would be nice to have a paragraph just describing what are SUME results, what does it include, and explain some of these things. What I have to do is look way down here. The global measurement gives an overall indication of satisfaction. Okay? But that should have been stated before the table. Stay it here, up here, so I understand when I look at the table, I can read the table much quicker, understand it, Maybe I don't want to. Maybe I don't care about the global column, and I look at the other columns. But give me a chance to know what it is. If you only leave it after the table, then again, it just creates more tension in the reader. It's a matter of meeting readers' expectations and being somewhat courteous to the reader. You can even, if you think about it in terms of being courteous, then I think you'll actually be going in the right direction. Pretend like the reader is just a nice guy, a nice person, and you want to show them around. Okay, so show them around before you start bombarding them with tables of figures. Tell them what to expect, what it has to offer them, what the table means, even before they get to it. It doesn't mean writing a lot; it just means writing something. Okay? So that's another example. And then we come to the appendices, which were really more interesting than anything because they actually gave the true details of exactly what was said and how the tests were conducted, etc. And that's what appendices should do. They should give all the real details that can't fit into the earlier parts of the report. Conversations, exactly what was told the participants. Those kind of things are usually put in an appendix. Okay, they don't belong in the body of the report because the report needs to be concise, and putting those kind of things is not concise. So you put them at the end in an appendix. But only in the appendix, I learned here that in fact they were given a user manual, a diskette, and an instruction manual. Okay, and they were told that this is what they were told. There's an envelope in the desk entitled Diary Mate. It contains a diskette and instruction manual. When you're ready, install the software. All the information you need is provided in the envelope. Okay, so that's the instruction they got. The instruction wasn't how to perform a task. It was simply that there's an instruction manual there, and they're to perform a particular task, and then find it in the manual and do it on your own, that type of thing. Okay, well that totally changed my view of the usability test here. And I realized I had to go back to the beginning of the report and read it all differently. I thought the way they made it sound, they were just given instructions orally, perhaps, of how to perform a task, and then they walked out of the room and saw if they could do it, which seems a little strange. But there was nothing was mentioned about the user manual other than it was included in the full product description. That's it. Okay, so that's the problem with this particular report, and I believe that by putting in the details, it could have been a much better report, a much more satisfactory report than it is.